Hi, so welcome to the first of the online teachings. In this particular one, we're going to cover quite a bit more than what I would normally cover. And the reason for that is I want to lay a really constructive foundation so that you're absolutely clear. My own personal journey with martial arts has been, as you guys know, one where I've explored Southeast Asian arts from the age of 9, training with Jerry Tan in Kuntao, and then finishing my journey in Indonesia with 5 different teachers. But Satria Fighting Arts is solely connected with Guru Ma. She's been my long-term teacher for nearly 25 years, and as some of you may know, she passed away in 2012. So this is really 25 years of her direction in a syllabus that we constructed together for students worldwide. And I want to make it absolutely clear that you understand the beginning and the end. So we're going to cover line by line everything that you will be covering in Satria Fighting Arts. So the first thing I'm going to discuss with you is the 144 postures. Okay? Now, a lot of people, when they see Satria Fighting Arts, they see things like Semba, and then they see things like Kuching, Harimau, Buaya, Gurat. So, and then they automatically think like Harimau style, Kuching style, Gurat style. Well, it's not like that. Satria Fighting Arts is not about styles. They're about postures. So I want to make very clearly there are 144 postures in Satria Fighting Arts. Some relate to ground, some relate to multiple attackers, some postures relate to more of the Kumbangan, the dance, some relate more to the weapon. So for example, if I was using a specific posture with the Bisao, it would be very different than if I was using it with the Krambit. Or, if I was using Krambit, I might use more of what I would call the Garuda system or the Garuda postures. And if I was using the Bisao, I might use more of the Kuching postures. And so as you skillfully learn the postures, you learn the different applications, the different techniques, the different meanings, and so forth. So I wanted to make that very clear. So that's the 144 postures. Now, where do you start off with Satria? Well, the Satria starts off with the greeting, and the greeting is the Semba. This is the greeting. So the greeting is very important, okay? And what the greeting covers firstly, philosophically, is how we approach one another. Student and teacher, teacher and student. And so the greeting is done like so, and then as you bow down, you look directly. If you're a teacher, you look directly to all of your students, and if you're the student, you look directly towards your teacher. And its symbolic meaning is that we are all equal. I respect all things. We all come from the same root, and we're on this journey together. So there's no hierarchy. Once you semba someone, you're saying, initially you're saying, I respect you, but then you're also saying, I'm connected to you, and we're on this journey together. So that's the philosophical meaning behind it. The next stage is, of course, is how we start the class, how we respect one another, but then it's an actual posture of bela diri, self-defense. So how do we use it? Right, so the first thing you'll know is that the Semba starts off with the head. You'll see that the elbows are pointed, and so that symbolizes that the first stage of your Satria training is the hard parts of the body and what to do with them. So the first thing we teach in Satria is how to use the hard parts of the body, how to use the side of the head, not the front of the head, the side of the head, how to use your elbows, how to use your knees, how to use your shins, how to use your feet, the heel and the ball of the feet, how to use your punches properly, where to hit, and not only what parts of the body do you use, but how to use them, how to rotate them. Satria Fighting Arts has a very unique, significant way of striking, okay? So rule number 1 is there's no pulling back ever. So when you hit, you continue you continue the flow. So for example, if I hit someone with my knuckles, I would carry on with my elbow and then maybe move in with a head, and then followed up with a knee, and then followed up with a shin kick. So this is a continuous flow of motion, and it's very, very important that you start that from day one. That's why I made the 2 Senbar DVDs, and if you haven't got them, please get them, because you know I progressively did it in a way that you can use it and you won't get confused. Now some people say, why is that the first aspect, the first phase of Satria, before you teach things like evasion, before you teach things like weapon, where it's practical? The first thing that you do is you have to notice that every unique individual being has hard parts of the body. And so that's what's required first, how to use the hard parts of your body, how to use things that are already there without you doing any conditioning. You don't have to do any kind of weight training to harden the head. You don't have to do any weight training to harden the elbows. You just have to learn to use them skillfully and in the correct fashion and in the correct way. So that phase for you as a student or a teacher should not be rushed. And when students come in, once you start teaching them how to use the head, the knuckles, the elbows, the shins, in motions of 4 and then maybe 6, and then maybe 8, and then take them up to 12. And if you can, if they're really skillful, you can take them up to 16. And when you're practicing, try and practice in different ranges, very close, mid-range, and long range, so that the student becomes aware of, okay, this is really close, I'm not really comfortable with this, but it's very important. First range, second range, and then what I would call long range. So that just means that you extend your stances and maybe you take a step when you come in. Very easily done. So how long should that stage really take? Well, that depends on the individual really, but don't rush this phase. Too many Satria students, they rush it, they want to go down to the ground straight away, and then they end up not really producing good striking. And really, look, skillful Silat people around the world, they're not just good semi-artistic practitioners, they're not just good with weapons. The first call of their real Beladiri self-defense is strike, how to strike. And so, you know, someone should really look at you and think, right, this guy can strike first before he goes to the ground. And so that shouldn't be rushed. For some students, it's 6 months because they've already had training. For others, it's a year. But when you're graduating your students, you shouldn't really pass them, even if they've been there a year or a year two, and they still can't manifest what's really required. Don't pass them. You know, I don't. If I feel that one of my students cannot move to the next phase, I don't. It doesn't mean he doesn't train the ground. It doesn't mean he doesn't train the other postures. It just means that I think he's still not good enough yet for me to really move him on. So please be aware of that. I hope I've covered the Senbar and you're absolutely sure. All right, let's move on. The next phase, okay, in your Satria syllabus and in your learning is what we call returning to the ground. Okay? Now, why did Guru Ma call this returning to the ground? Well, what she taught me was that everything in life starts from the ground. If you think about the way that you were born, okay, once you're born, once your mother weans you, the next thing she does is she leaves you on the ground. And what do you do in the ground? You crawl. You try to get up. You fall. You roll forwards. You roll backwards. You fall again. You get up. You eventually kind of like, you're able to kind of, your core develops and you're able to support yourself. And then very slowly but surely, you start trying to kind of get up. And if you observe the postures, they're very similar to the Silat postures. They're very similar to Buaya. They're very similar to the Jongkok posture, where we get up and down. If you notice children, when they're getting up and down, they squat. It's called a Hindu squat. The modern version is just called a squat, but it was called a Hindu squat. The Indonesian name is called Jongkok. You'll see Southeast Asians, they sit when they wait for a bus in that position. Okay, why is that important? Well, look, think about it. When you go back to the ground, what you're doing is you're reconditioning your anatomy, your physiology, your body, so that it can move, it can jump, it can fall. What does fighting normally end up in? Fighting, if you see two fighters, and you've seen it in MMA and mixed martial arts now for years, you see fights go bang, bang, bang. Unless someone knocks someone out, it ends up on the ground, and they end up grappling or wrestling or throwing one another. So that reconnection that you need to make with your students to the ground is very important. Most people, when they hit their 20s and 30s, if they haven't trained on the ground, they have a fear. They no longer know how to roll. They no longer know how to fall. They no longer know how to kind of adjust. And you'll see a lot of injuries. So this is a very, very important phase. So how does it work? Well, it works with, as you know, the kuching. The kuching is the first thing that we do, and we do the circle walking backwards and the circle walking forwards, and we do it both sides. Look, don't worry about the physical aspects of what I'm saying, me demonstrating, because on the next online, I'm going to revisit what I'm saying today on a physical level. So I will be revisiting Semba, how to train it, and then we'll be going progressively over Kuching, Harimau, Buaya. This one is I'm going to go through everything that you're going to do with me so that you're absolutely clear of what we're going to cover line by line, step by step, precept upon precept, so you're clear. I want you to be really clear in my role. When I met Guru Ma and we started training, once I finished, my role really was to preserve this information, preserve the knowledge. And that's why I'm still linked with the university in Holland, and Chris Guru Ma's has done a great job in preserving everything, not just the martial arts, but the Ayurvedic, the therapeutic. So this is really, I'm really kind of protective with this information, you know, and this is a big step for me going online, because, you know, normally I'm very kind of like, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, I've kind of like pulled back from the martial arts because I feel that people just take and they don't really understand, you know, and I'm not into that, because if you're going to learn something, learn it really well, learn the concept, learn the culture behind it, learn, you know, the feeling behind it, learn the soul behind it, learn the application behind it. So I want to do this properly with you. So be patient when you're watching this, and be patient with this course, because we will go step by step. So back to the kuching. Right, now the kuching, the ground has the kuching, harimau, buaya and gurak-gurak. What do they cover and why are they separate? Well, the kuching deals with mainly mobility, agility, change of direction, speed, quickness, sharpness, and the ability to adjust in any given situation. It deals with rolls and jumps and so forth. It's very different to the harimau, and that is what's required first. When you're training kuching, you're training the cardio. The physical conditioning is you're doing lots of jumps, you're doing lots of rolls, you're doing lots of circle walking on 2 hands, on 1 arm. So you are doing strength training, but predominantly you're doing what is called strength endurance. So you're working the cardio. You're building up the students so that they can move in the sasaran, they can wrestle, they can fight, they can roll, they can jump, they can skip. Okay? Why is that different to the harimau? Well, the harimau is completely on a different level, because the harimau is a very, very technical, applicable posture to get your opponent on the ground as quickly as you possibly can. And once it's on the ground, then the kuching flows in with locks, chokes, breaks and pins, and that's how it kind of works. Okay, that doesn't mean that the kuching hasn't got sweeps and takedowns. It's just the function is different. On a physical level, the harimau deals more with power and power strikes. The kuching, you've got to see it more as a kind of agile, mobile and flexible posture. Got that? Then we move to the buaya. Well, the buaya is interesting because the buaya is, again, a system, a posture that tries to bridge the gap. So if you imagine harimau being long, okay, that distance, long range, the buaya is different. The buaya it sticks, it glues, it tries to bridge the gap straight away. So imagine someone throws a punch, you enter, and what you do is you try to bridge that gap straight away. All this I'll be showing on the next, so don't worry, but I'm just giving you the, because some of you are thinking, show me, show me, show me. Yep, in the following. So, buaya is what sticks. It bridges the gap, it's for close range fighting, and once you're there, once that gluing factor's there, it's down to the ground, with pins, with chokes, with breaks. And then again, once on the ground, it flows into harimau and kuching. Moving on to gurat-gurat. Right, the gurat-gurat's completely different. The gurat-gurat trains in a completely different way. The conditioning is different. Its primary use is the core stability, lots of upper body strength, and then on a technical level, it deals with the sensitivity of the hands and the feet. Now, and the postures are mainly forward, as you see with the yoga, and on the back. So, for example, say I was swept on the ground and I landed on the back. My feet would be the first line of contact. So we have a very specific way of training the feet. Some of you have already done this, and some of you haven't, but again, I will be demonstrating. And then the hands come in. Gurat-gurat also has a very soft sensitivity drill where you follow the person, until you end up on the ground. It's quite a unique system. It has a lot of breaks, it has a lot of chokes, it has a lot of pins, and it also has weapons. Remember that all the postures, kuching, harimau, buaya, gurat-gurat, work upright and also work on the ground. And they have a transitional posture. Remember, the transitional posture is the mid-stance. So the mid-stance represents the ground and upright. So for example, say I started in the Semba position and went into the balabe position. This is called balabe, okay, position. Or what people normally call basang, but basang means ready, a ready position. That position has 3 different postures. It has normal upright, mid, and then long. The same applies with kuching. If I went into a classical kuching position here, that would have upright, it would have mid, and it would have long. The same as if I went into the harimau position here, that would have long, mid, and short. And the same as gurat-gurat. If I came in with a gurat-gurat position or a buaya position, it would have a longer stance, a shorter stance, and up and down. So it goes, the postures go that way and that way. Very important that you understand that, because the transition between upright and ground and mid and short and mid and long that way, they all have to flow. And again, this phase takes time. So now you've learnt the Semba. Let's look at that. Let's relook at that. Semba meaning the greeting, some of the applications of Semba, which are you've got some joint locks, some neck breaks, and then you've learned predominantly how to strike. So now you have a student that can strike very quickly with all the hard parts of the body. Head, elbow, knee, shin, foot, heel. And now you have a student that not only can do that, but is fluent and agile and mobile and powerful and strong and sensitive to get up and down from the ground. He can kick, he can jump, he can break, he can lock, he can sweep, he can pin, he can do all those things. So now you have already, if you look at that armour, you have a very, very agile, mobile, quick striker plus someone who's proficient on the ground. And you don't have to learn boxing for close range, Wing Chun for chi sao, judo for throwing, wrestling for pinning, and then Brazilian jiu-jitsu for finishing. You don't, because it's all in there, and it's fluid. Everything links with everything. Right. What, for me, in my opinion, separates the Satria from the other Silat systems, and you've got to remember, I've learned Silat Minangkabau in Padang with Guru Asnan, I've learned Chimande in Ciawi with Guru Mahmud, I've learned Silat Wali Mahmud, but not learned them, I completed them. Silat Wali Mahmud in Mahmud village itself. What's the difference between what the Satria is and these other arts? Well, I can tell you, Chimande has a lot more pauses. Chimande is very limited. It's mainly a striking. That's why you'll normally find Chimande students normally go out and do other arts. The Silat Wali Mahmud is older than the Chimande, so it has a little bit more kind of sweeps and locks and strikes, but it's not as comprehensive. It has no ground. That's why you'll normally find people improvise from other Silat styles. The other very really clear sign the significant thing that makes Satria different is the flow of motion, the softness that you have. And that's purely because the way Guru Ma used to teach. Guru Ma always used to say that fighting should be like nature. It should be natural, it should be organic, it should be fluid, it should be unpredictable. It shouldn't have pauses, it shouldn't have commas. Fighting is not a language which has full stops and sentences. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Once you see a fight take place in the animal kingdom, it doesn't have a comma. Animals fight and adapt and take shape and form. If you see two animals fight, maybe one of them runs away, but that motion is fluid. It's moving in the trees, up and down the trees, maybe until it gets safe. But that motion is constantly fluid. If you see two animals fight, you don't see a pause, a check, a comma. What do you see? It's fluid motion, natural to their body, natural to their body type, natural to their environment. If you see animals fight on concrete, it would be very different than fighting on a mountain. It would be very different than fighting on a tree or fighting on some ice. Animals adapt. They adapt to their environment. It's the same with the silat. So what you're really doing in the Satria is taking those pauses out. You know, really taking out any form of kind of like tradition, shape, and become formless. Very much what Bruce Lee was trying to do. He was saying become like water. It's a very difficult thing to do, because the moment you put fighting in an arena, a cage, you start to use the cage starts to form the way you fight. If you take fighting in a ring situation with a referee and you add some minutes, the fighting begins to take the form and the image of the ring. So one of the ways that Guru Ma said on how to become organic is the environment, the sasaran. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because now we have, you guys, you've done your semba, you've done your pukul, you've done your kuching, you've done your boa, you've done your harimau, and you've done your gurak. Now, in comes the sasaran, the circle, the place of fighting, the place of exploration, the place where organic movement and motion will be encouraged. So how does that work? Okay, so let's just say now I have 12 of you, like in June in Holland. We're going to be focusing on Sasaran Silat, which will be, I will be preparing the environment. So let's just say there's 12 of you in a circle, and I decide that I will have ropes in there. A rope one way and a rope that way, like you've seen on some of the DVDs that I've shown or some of the EWS clips. And let's just say that 4 of us are moving those ropes that way. So you've got 4 ropes moving, and I bring 2 people in with blades. Let's just say single bisau. They come in with their kumbangan, concentrating, and then all of a sudden I go, da! And they go from, you know, really, really soft movement into battle. Now, they're not allowed to hit the ropes. What happens? Now they've got to adjust. Now they've got to jump. Now they've got to flow. Now, what does that do to the person who comes into the sasana? Well, it's a training methodology for opening up the natural organic flow of motion that already exists inside of you. So you imagine, how do you apply that in everyday life? Well, you imagine if you were in a road rage accident, you come out, someone comes out, there's cars flashing by, and all of a sudden a car flashes by, but someone's trying to hit you, you spin out and so forth. It's the same way. See, so there's a way of training organic motion and movement. On the beginning level, it's about not holding. So for example, when you're practicing your pukul, don't pull back, don't go ha, ha. Keep it moving. Keep the movements. You can go here and you can go here, but don't keep going, pulling back. Twist, twist, twist. Very much like you're running. You see, when you're running, it's just natural body movement. One takes the other, takes the other, takes the other. It's the same as your pukul. You should flow. When you're hitting with your pukul, you should flow. It shouldn't be, okay, adjust. So this trains the nervous system. And it was one of the very, very first things that I learned from Guru Ma. I'll tell you a story. When I first got to Guru Ma's house, she already knew that I was UK national champion. And if you haven't seen the interview with Chris on Warrior Guards the Mountain, please get it, because Guru Ma's son talks about Guru Ma, her training, his training, and my training. And one of the first things that Guru Ma said to me was this. She said to me, once I was in the garden training with her, she asked me to perform my Kuntao. And the Kuntao that I learned from Jerry Tan was, he came from Medan, Sumatra. So he's a Sumatranese Chinese, and he had learned Kuntao. And if you know Kuntao, it is a blend of many things. Like Silat is a blend of many things, okay? So the first thing that Guru Ma said to me was, you're very predictable. Your movement is very predictable. I know exactly what you're going to do before you do it. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm UK national champion. I've just come up from the back of, I'm UK national champion. What do you mean? She said, it's too slow. It's too predictable. It's not organic. It doesn't flow. And I didn't really understand, because I thought I was very fluid. I thought I was very quick. And I was back in the day enough to be UK national champion. But what she was talking about was I was too stuck in tradition. What she was talking about, I was too ringified. I was too refereeified, if you want to call it. So once I started coming into the understanding that the environment forms your fighting, then I realized that the sasaran was the most important. It all works together, but it was a huge part of how to form a fighting system. So when you guys finish your Kuching Harimau Buaya, Gurat, and your Pukalan, Semba, then it's time to go into the sasaran. And that's an idea now of what the sasaran is. So now comes the sasaran, okay? The environment. And you as a creative director of the sasaran have to think creatively according to the fighters that enter in the sasaran. So for example, back in the day when I was training Alvin and Chris and Harcourt and Gordon and all those guys at EWS, I had to think, what did Alvin require more than Chris? Well, if you look at Chris, Lani's cousin, Chris was very, very quick, very, very skillful. Alvin was a lot slower, he was a lot heavier. Not now, but back then he was. So I had to keep Alvin on the ground a lot, jumping under tables, on top of tables, under tables, on top of tables. Was Chris didn't require that. Chris required other things, like Chris wasn't a very good grappler. He didn't like getting in close. He used to like to move and hit. So I made the sasaran for Chris based around his weaknesses, and the sasaran for Alvin based around his weaknesses, until I made their weaknesses their strengths. And that's what you have to do. And that's where your creativity and imagination comes in, okay? Really, two really important points. Creativity, imagination, right. Okay, look, most martial arts, think about it, are stuck in tradition. They're stuck in form. And I'm telling you, come out of form. Yet you still learn postures. So what I'm saying is, what is the part that develops your free fighting? It's the sasaran. And that's where your imagination and your creativity comes in. Use ropes, use tables, use ice, turn the lights off. 3 against 1, 1 against 2, 2 on the ground, 1 upright. Use your imagination, explore it. Be free with it. I'm never against people kind of like using their imagination in Satria. What I don't like is people taking things and adding things and linking things and trying to blend things that don't blend. You can't blend Chimamde and Satria. You can't blend Silat Wali Mahmud. They don't blend. And you who think they might blend, they don't, because you have no knowledge of it still. Once you finish the Satria, then you'll go, I see why they don't blend. So please understand, wherever you want to explore and be creative and be imaginative, do it in the sasaran at the right time. Don't bring in the sasaran when they're not ready, because you'll destroy people's confidence. You'll destroy students' confidence. It's one of the rules of the sasaran. If you bring someone in too early, well, he doesn't know how to move, slip or slide, he doesn't know how to roll, and you put him in a knife fight and suddenly he gets hurt or wounded, you can destroy his confidence. Sasaran's for the right time. What's that right time? Finish the Pukulan Semba and finish the Kuching Harimau Buaya Gurat. Now, what do I mean by the finishing it? How do you know that someone's finished Gurat, Buaya, Harimau and Kuching? Well, if you basang and one of your students is able to go into an upright position with some strikes, a sweep, a takedown, and go around the anatomy, putting on locks through Boy Harimau Kuching fluidly with his eyes closed, he is ready for Sasaran. That's how you know. And that's why I always say, people, take your time. So many people want to move. Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. Take your time, there's no rush. You know, it's taking me, it's 25 years of my journey now. I started martial arts when I was 9, learning boxing. Then I moved on to Wing Chun for 6 months. That didn't work. I moved on to Kun Tao for 8 years until Silat gripped me. And then I've never left it. But it's been a journey, guys. And don't rush it. You know, wait till the body conditioning is there. Wait till someone can, you know, fall on the floor and you feel that they're soft without smashing their shoulders and their knees. Okay? Too many Silat people around the world have bad knees. That's why learning the postures correctly is important. You know, I watch some people do some of the Harimau styles where their knees completely in, and it's bad. And then you find out 3 or 4 or 5 years later they've got bandages on their knees, all of them. That's because they haven't really learned the actual postures properly. So please take your time. Right. So moving on, after this phase, what happens next? So you've learnt the Semba, you've learnt the Kuching Boy Harimau Gurat. What happens next? The next stage is the Garuda. The Garuda. Now, the Garuda is a very, very, very unique, well, there are a bunch of postures, like I said, not styles, postures that enable you to fight very, very quickly in multiple attackers. Okay? That's the purpose behind those postures. The purpose behind the Kuching is agility, mobility, flexibility. The purpose behind Buaya is mainly to bridge the gap, stay close to someone, and then control them. So Garuda's purpose is mainly multiple attackers. It gives you the ability to fight 1, 2, 3, and also fight against weapons. Okay? And so what do you think the Sasaran in the Garuda will be? It will be Garuda versus 1, 2, 3. It will be the Garuda versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It will be the Garuda versus single weapon, Krambe, and so forth. And so again, look, you can see how the system's forming. Learning the postures, the meanings behind it, the purpose, Sasaran changes. If someone's just learned Kuching, the Sasaran's just Kuching. If someone's learned the 4, well, you can blend it, you can change it, you can transform it. Do you get my point? Okay, let's move on. After the Garuda and during the Garuda, what is introduced? Well, some of the weapons. Single knife, double knife, golok, Krambe. Those weapons are now introduced. Why? Because Kuching, Boy, Harimau, Gurat, and Garuda all have those weapons. Okay? And then what happens next during this process is you get the 3rd root principle in the Satria. Let me explain. You have the bela diri, the self-defense, the fighting aspect. Okay? You have the Sasaran, the environment that forms the fighting. And the 3rd thing is you have the Kumbangan, the Seni, the flower dance, Kumbangan, the flower dance, the Seni side, the artistic expression. But not only that, the female aspect. Now, just hold it there because we're on Garuda and we're about to enter into the Sasaran, but the Kumbangan has just come in. Okay? Now, is the Kumbangan different than the Silat? Yes. It is different. Are the movements different? Yes. You know, this is called water hand. This is called rising sun. You know, this is called waterfall. This is called 2 bamboo seeking light. So it's very, very different. Very, very different. So why? Because the postures in Satria are broken up into 2 main principles. The physical and the sensitive side. So the physical side and the internal. Physical and internal, male and female. So when we say female, we say more internal. When we say male, we say more external. Okay? And that's how we break the whole of the Satria up. All the postures have male and female. If you look at our lanka, our stepping, they are broken up into 6 male, which I show on videos, and 6 female, which I don't show. I don't show all of this, but for you guys, you will learn it all. But you can see for public use, I only show the male aspects, or I only show 6 lankas. But there are 12. There are female lankas, there are male lankas. Like, for example, you imagine this is male kuching, and then you have the female kuching. You have the closed, you have the open, you have the external, you have the internal. Okay? So that's how it works. The Kembangan is the feminine aspect of the sasran. Let me explain. So now you're in the sasran, you've learnt your kuching, your buaya, your harimau, garuda, some weapons, you've learnt your semba, and you've also started learning the Kembangan. Now the Kembangan is totally the internal side. It's all about your feeling. It's all about how you pick a weapon, how you feel the weapon, how you feel the environment, how your feet touches the environment, how you feel your opponent, how you feel the external room. It's all about your sensitivity. It's all about your perception. It's all about your sense of where he is, where she is. And that's why we enter in the sasran with the Kembangan. Now, you enter in slowly because you're feeling, you're developing what we call rasa, your instinctive, natural, organic responses, your internal energy, your inner system. So in Silat, we have the physical, this, but we also have something called the internal body. So there is internal body development. The Kembangan is the beginning of it. What I mean by that is, look, you think about this. When you walk into a room, okay, say you're in a party now, and you walk into the room, you've come in and you say, hi, 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 hi. If you're not aware of the room, you might not be aware of the vibration. If someone's had a huge argument or someone's about to do something that's not nice, if you're open, you can pick that up. It's the same way as if you walk into a room when people are talking about you, you feel it. Where do you feel it? You feel it on the inside, the internal aspect. You know what I'm talking about. You know this is true. And people like to deny this. People like to say, oh, this doesn't exist. Yes, it does. You pick things up on a daily basis. You might be talking to someone and he might be telling you something with like this, but you know he's saying something else because you feel it. You go, no, I perceive you're not really saying that. Your yes is really not a yes. What you're really saying is blah, blah, blah. And that's your internal body. So in Silat, you have what we call the feminine body, and you have the external body. And so the postures are broken down into the male and the female. So the Kembangan is the female development of that. It's the building your intuition, building your rasa, entering the sasran with intense feeling, so that when you hear da and you go into the bela diri, the self-defense, it's natural. Because Silat is not like other martial arts, guys. You've got to understand that the most important aspect of Silat is the female side, not the male side. Because the female side is what you sense, what you feel. And what you sense and what you feel will ignite the response, not the other way. Not what you think and then you respond. What you feel and you respond. And I know this is a bit cliche, but Bruce Lee talked about it in one of his films. He said, feel, but he didn't really articulate what he meant. Don't think, feel. But he didn't really explain what he meant. What he was saying was, your thoughts are too slow. If you think it's too slow. Some of you who have fought, you know that. When we go into the sasran with the bisao, and you hear the da, and all of a sudden someone thrusts in with a blade, you know if you think, oh, I should have done Lanka L step, it's too slow. You've got to be in that sense. That very deep sense of awareness, concentration, perception, instinctive rasa, organic motion, organic flow, organic movement flows from that point, not what you think, but what you feel. So that all this training really is so that your body can move instinctively. And this, my friends, what separated Guru Ma from all my other teachers. This main point. Because I experienced this. I experienced this in fighting. There was a point where I'd think, and I'd do okay, you know, strategy, maybe I should have closed up. But then there were other moments where I would move naturally and organically, yet My teachers didn't have the articulation, all the knowledge, all the information to get that out. And so I was constantly thinking, there's something missing. There's something missing. And it was only when I met Guru Ma that she was able to really translate this and impart this in a very concise, accurate way. She talked about the internal body, the natural body, the organic flow. You know, the natural responses of animal is based on feeling. I'll give you another example. Before animals fight, if you look at every single animal, deers, the weaker animals, how do they defend themselves first? It's mainly by feeling. You feel like you see deers and they're just very sensitive creatures and they're aware. I'm not saying they win, I'm not saying they escape, but that's the first line of defense. So sila is that. How do you think that we have evolved and survived over so many millions of years? Do you think it's because we're stronger than any other animal? No. It's because of our imagination, our creativity, and our feeling. That's what's helped humanity evolve. I'm not saying that we're the kindest animals on the earth, but I'm saying that we have lived long, and we have lived long not being so strong. Why? Because of that intuition. Okay? So that's the internal side, and that's the external side. I'm going to carry on. I know this is a long one. I'm going to carry on because this is the foundation of the whole Satria, and then we'll move on. Right, okay, so now you've learnt the Kumbangan with all its names. You've learnt the weapons, not all of them, but you've learnt the hard weapons, the male weapons. Now you've learnt the Kumbangan, done Garuda. What's next? So the next part now is really what we call, it's the phase where it's you've come through the external aspects of the Satria, you've done the weapons, you've started to open up the internal body, and now we go deeper into the internal body. Now we go deeper into the internal aspects of the Satria. What's next? Well, the next part is Garik Garak. Right response, right action. Moving in the right response to response, not response to reaction, but responding to the correct response. So the next wave of training, the next aspect of your training should all be how to respond, building the internal body. And we have a very, very, very concise way of training that. Again, I will demonstrate at the right time. And then after that comes the Sarang Laban, the strategic side. Now you know how to instinctively, then we pick up the Sarang Laban, which is a way of trapping people, using internal energy to redirect energy. Again, it's an internal practice. You might think it's shaped, but it's not. It's purely internal. There's a lot of mind, concentration, awareness, and feeling. So you learn how to read the body, read intention, and create intentions and redirect energy. And that's through the Garik Garak and then the Sarang Laban. And then we move further into what is called the knowledge, ilmus anatomy, the knowledge of the anatomy. The student learns 108, there are 108 points on the body. And then what we do is we break down those 108 points in a very, very methodical way into 16 different jurus. It starts on your manuals. You can see after the Kumbangan flower dance, you've got starts on page 50 here. Page 51. After the weapons are written out, there you go. It's called enter the sacred Kris phase. Now the reason why we call it enter the sacred Kris is because there are 16 jurus. Each of them has a character of an iron that makes the Kris. And each character has a purpose, a meaning, and is connected to striking points in the body. So we call this, those 16 jurus are what the main King Raja Pukul. King Raja Pukul is the main striking, big striking, but also death striking. Then all your strikes become point targets. But we do it in the same way, in the same manner. And you learn it, phase 1, phase 2, and there are 16. And each phase has a name. So, for example, phase 1 in King Raja Pukul would be Karankijang Iron. The vibration sound is like a buzzing bee. What I mean by that is in this phase, you're also learning how to build the internal body to take those blows. So you learn after the Sarang Laban, After the garak garik, you enter this phase and you're learning how to kind of strike the body in those points, what angles to hit, and also how to build a body from striking. So it's a really, really, really interesting phase, but quite complex, and it needs a lot of instruction. I think some of the Spanish boys, I think Sebastian now, hi Sebastian and the crew out there, Sebastian's just finished his Garuda, and he is now entering, I think the next stage would be, I'm teaching him the Krambit. So we're going stage by stage, and since I've been doing that with Sebastian, he's been brilliant. The Spanish guys have been brilliant. All of you guys have been brilliant, but I'm very pleased with the Spanish guys because they've been very patient and they're learning it brilliantly as it should. And as well, if you ask them, they're reaping the rewards as well because they've kind of gone, look, I'm going to go back and I'm going to learn this properly. The information is brilliant. The training is excellent. And so they invest and they take their time. Okay, so let's go back. So now you've learned the Semba, the Kuching, the Buaya, the Harimau, the Gurat, the ground phase. You've come up, you've learnt the Garuda, you've learnt most of the weapons, the external weapons, you've learnt the Kumbangan, you've come into the Sastran, all the sparring, coming in, coming out, through the Kumbangan, you've done all the sparring, you've gone into the Kris, what we call, enter the sacred Kris, which is the 16 jurus with the irons. What next? After this phase, you finish the full uniform phase. So when we say full uniform, we say now you learn swords, you've got the Kris. So on this side, look, I've got the more advanced weapons, and on this side, I've got the more beginning weapons. So here we've got the Krambe and we've got the Bisau. These are double. We've got the Golok. And then here we have the Salendang. Don't forget the Desta. Don't forget the Sarong, the sword, single and double, and the Kris. So once you've done that, you go on to the advanced weapons. And now you have full uniform. So you have all of that. And you're able to flow in all of that pukul, in all of that ground, in all of that Garuda, in all of that Kumbangan, in the Sasaran. So remember what I said. Now you're more advanced. The Sasaran becomes more advanced. So you imagine now, you're in your full uniform, you have your Kris, you have your Bisau, you have your double Bisau, you have your Krambit, you have your single sword, your double sword, your Salendang, and now I can make the Sasaran tailored to that. So you might get, on a practical level, you might get two guys with two swords, 2 against 2, 1 against 2, Kris versus Krambit, Krambit versus Bisau, double Bisau versus double Krambit. A lot of fun. Salendang, which I like using, you know I like using the Salendang versus Bisau. And this is great fun and great artistic flow and great work and really good martial arts, very skillful martial arts. But let me explain. If you haven't learned the internal side, you won't be able to do it. Because you start hitting people with this, it hurts. It hurts. You know, I've broken fingers and hands during this phase. So this is why you've got to learn it bit by bit, stage by stage. You've got to build up the internal body. And you've got to do it slowly. You've got to learn the right lines. Because if you don't, you're just going to end up doing kickboxing. You're just going to end up covering in yourself and beating yourself up with sticks. I've seen it happen. I've seen martial arts. They learn Filipino martial arts. And then by the time they spar, what does it look like? It looks like two sticks smashing each other, two guys with 2 sticks smashing each other. Nothing. Empty. Why? Because they didn't learn the internal development. They just thought, let me take the shape and the form and practice the shape and the form. And martial arts is more than that. Okay? So, now you have your full uniform. Okay? The last phase of your Satria training is the therapeutic side. Okay? So, Guru Ma always used to say, if you're going to kill, you need to heal, okay? Or if you're going to heal, you need to kill. Either one, they're both linked. So during this course, I will bring in the therapeutic side, bit by bit, line by line. I normally teach the stretching applications and the basic massage. And again, all the postures, remember, it's not like you learn Satria, the postures, and then you learn to stretch outside of the postures. The stretching is done in Kuching, Harimau, Buaya, Gurat. You learn how to do the stretch in those postures, to do the stretch, and you also learn how to receive the stretch in those postures. Okay, and it's the same with the therapeutic. There's going to be knowledge of herbs, how to make your own herbs, how to boil them, how to use them, how to apply them on the skin, on the bones, on the tendons. Okay, so the Satria is full. Don't think that it's just just physical training. It's not. We have the esoteric side as well, the philosophical side. We also have the knowledge of the Tanaga Dalam, internal body development, which I've touched upon. All this is in the Satria, but how does it conclude? Right. Very important that you understand. Now you've understood the structure and the syllabus and the Bela Diri and the Kumbangun and the Sasaram, that threefold cord that knits it all together. The Kumbangun brings the internal body, the environment determines the fighting, and the Bela Diri is the fighting. Okay? So now how does this conclude? Well, full uniform. So now you're in full uniform. You have full understanding of how to heal the body, full understanding how to maneuver all these weapons, plus empty hand, through a systematic Kumbangan, which deals with the internal body, moving meditation, perception and awareness. Then, what's the last aspect of it? The last aspect is the marriage of the male and the female aspect. If you look at Guru Ma, when you guys go to the university in Holland and you find Guru Ma's logo and the actual, I think I've got one here, the picture of Guru Ma, you will find the image is a male and a female and then a lotus underneath. Okay, that is the symbol of her school. Male, female and lotus underneath, and that was the secret of the Satria. It's both male and female through 144 postures. Now the last bit is, remember, male and female. Well, the last bit is the marriage of the two. When the male and the female become married, when the male and the female marry, you have the Chris, the DNA. You guys know that there is a woven Chris, like so, but there are also straight Chris's. If you see this, it looks like our DNA. Well, this is the female Chris. You can see the shape of a woman's body, but you also have the straight Chris, okay, which is the male aspect. So the last bit is called the lotus. The lotus. And that is the marriage of the male and the female. The last bit. And I really hope that all of you guys get there, because I want you to do this properly. I want you to learn it properly. I want you to go through all those components and really, really enjoy your training, knowing that you've learned the internal side, the external side, knowing that you've learned, that all of the weapons, you've got the full uniform, and you can stand up with your full uniform, which is in a sense like your black belt 7th Dan, if you want to call it. These are your, in a sense, belts. We don't have belts in Satria or in Sila. Okay? Well, look, that will conclude the first one. I hope you've really understood the foundation. In our next one, I'm going to go back to Semba, and we're going to go line by line. And so each one will go line by line. I also want to say, guys, listen, I am producing some DVDs, so please get them. I am producing some up clips. You're all in contact with me via Facebook. Please send all those questions that you may have to Lani, and I promise you, as from the next one, I will answer all your questions. Systematically, I will make 10 to 15 minutes for all your questions. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Good luck with your training. I'm off to Spain in about 10 hours. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Spanish crew. And safe training, wise training, intelligent training with a smile on your face. Semba.